Most men say they don't want to be fat, but they eat at random times, train at random intensities, and run their body like a business with no schedule. In business, if inventory isn't managed properly, cash gets trapped. In your body, energy is stored. Sustained energy isn't about discipline, it's about timing. Welcome to Longevity Masters. I'm your host, Grant Hutchby, and this show exists to provide the formula for male founders to reclaim optimal years by reversing their biological age. Our flagship system is the primal pyramid, and today I'll take you through one of the layers that we teach. The metric that we measure is the primal age, and this is a unified biological age score like nothing else. The mission is simple. We want to reclaim as many years of optimal life as possible in as many founders as possible. I've learned that when my body is run like my business, it performs the way that it should. Everything we teach links back to that principle: structure, sequencing, and management. And obviously, we keep it simple. Today, we're inside the fix cycle, which is the operations department. If operations in your business fails, everything collapses. It's the foundation you must get right before you scale. The same applies to your body. This session is sustained energy. What controls it, why fat gets stored, and why timing beats discipline every single time. Let's dive in. The objectives for today. Here they are. We're moving from signals to energy control. This is about stabilizing your operations, not optimizing things yet. We are going to remove diet confusion and replace willpower with structure. By the end, you must choose one clear action to move forward with. So, in the last session, we went through the foundational inputs, which was light, oxygen, and magnetism. Now we move into the first layer of the primal pyramid. This is the fix cycle, and the primary organ in this cycle is the gut. And if the business operations is bad, it's like building a house on sand. The metabolic rhythm, which is the scientific explanation of the session that we're doing today, is all about daily energy management, hence sustained energy. Cortisol and insulin are the hormones that we're focusing on, and they are really important for energy release and energy storage, hence why this session is called sustained energy. The metrics we care about here, if you use Whoop or other wearable devices, if you can find something similar, is the recovery score and body fat percentage. These are two really good things that will tell us how well we are doing on this particular area. So if this layer is unstable, nothing above it can scale. So it's really, really important that we get this right first before we move on. This is a reminder of where we are in the hierarchy of the body as a business analogy. We're in the central operations of the company, and we are in the office. This is where the resources are created and allocated. Operations and inventory decide how urgent things feel, what gets stored, what gets burned, and what gets prioritized. If this team is mismanaged, everything becomes unstable. So, what is cortisol? Cortisol is not the bad guy. The problem isn't cortisol. The problem is the poor timing of cortisol. It's the operations manager, and it mobilizes energy. It gets you up. It sharpens focus. It increases alertness. You need a strong cortisol rise in the morning. That is healthy. High in the morning equals performance. High at night equals stress. Chronic late day cortisol is the problem of poor sleep, stubborn fat storage, and recovery issues. So it's not cortisol that's the problem, it's when we've got our cortisol that is. So we don't try and suppress cortisol, we manage it. Remember that carbon dioxide dumping, the breathing exercises that we discussed in the previous episode, this can also be a great way to spike your cortisol in the morning. So what we were talking about in the previous session about light and oxygen, they are really good activities. So really bright lights in the morning, either from sunlight or from a sad lamp, and doing CO2 dumping, which is basically just taking a deep breath in and releasing it really quickly. You do, 30 rounds of that and your body will feel warm, and actually you'll raise your cortisol. So that looks a little bit like this. I won't do 30 of them, but you get the idea. If you do that, maybe 20 to 30 of those, 3 rounds, that will get you going. That will spike your cortisol in the morning. So this is the ideal rhythm, not a strict clock time. So just put times at the bottom to give you a gauge, because most people get up at the sort of 5:30 time. This timing shifts with obviously your wake and sleep time, but cortisol, basically what this is trying to highlight is that it should be at its highest shortly after waking. That is your built-in performance boost. And if you activate it right with the right protocols, cortisol will spike and will be high at the time that it should be high. So a morning spike equals high performance tasks like exercise, deep work, hard conversations, and then it gradually declines through the afternoon. So that's a good time for other meetings, calls, family time, and some lower value tasks. And then the evening, it should be really, really low. It's never non-existent, but it should be low to allow for things like melatonin to rise and come in, and other hormones to come in to help you relax so that you can recover while you rest and sleep. The problem isn't cortisol itself, it's mistimed cortisol. And if we can fix this by spiking it in the morning and not suppressing it, if you think that you need to suppress your cortisol to suppress stress, that's where the problem is, because what you're doing is probably suppressing it in the morning when it needs to be high. If it's high at night, that's where you feel wired, restless, you don't have great sleep, and you have a higher body fat risk. Remember, your operations manager sets everyone up first thing and is off duty at night. It's the same with your cortisol. That's why cortisol is the operations manager. So just a reminder, light exposure within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking is the biggest driver of the morning spike of cortisol. It isn't part of these 3 actions, but because we spoke about it in the last session, I just wanted to point it out here that getting your bright light first thing in the morning is going to be really fundamental to spiking that cortisol first thing. But number 1, this is your performance window. You need to get your hard task done here while cortisol is naturally high. This is sort of the first 8 hours of you waking up. And then number 2, which is 9 to 15 hours after waking, you need to consciously manage your cortisol. Don't artificially spike it with stress, caffeine, or chaos. This is where you don't stop working, but your workload sort of reduces throughout the day, and therefore your stress will start to reduce throughout the day. And that's really important because that leads into the 3rd stage of the day, which is when you wind down and actually go to sleep. So you need to protect this drop, reduce your stimulation and your conflict and work intensity so that you can spend the sort of last 1 to 2 hours of the time that you're awake so that it reduces cortisol down, melatonin gets released, and you absolutely can fall asleep nicely and recover well overnight. The target here is to get heart rate as low as possible, ideally within a few beats of your resting heart rate overnight before you go to sleep. Anything that significantly raises your heart rate isn't good. So like things like violent TV, watching sports, exercise, arguments with your kids or partner. Now, sex is different. While it raises your heart rate in the short term, after you orgasm, you get a good relaxation and lowering of cortisol, which is what we want at this time of day. And remember, this is true for both males and females. So, guys, if you're not getting enough of it, just remind your partner it's a great way to get to sleep. So, remember all these points and think of ones that maybe you're not doing as well as you could. Maybe you're having caffeine too late in the day, or maybe you're having hard conversations later on in the day. What you want to do is you want to try and organize your day so that you're doing the hardest stuff at the beginning when cortisol is high, and it gradually reduces throughout the day, getting to an absolute minimum just before you go to sleep so that your heart rate is as low as possible. So no one wants to be fat, right? Most people think that fat is the enemy. It isn't. The issue is where fat is stored. So it's where it's stored in your body. So fat is not the issue. What I need to show you here is the 3 different types of fat that you have. So the first type of fat, which is, and I'm touching on this first. Now, fat is what we call adipose tissue. So SAT is subcutaneous adipose tissue. And this is the fat that you see under the skin. This is what we actually call fat, but it's mostly cosmetic and it's very neutral metabolically. The next type of fat is really good fat, which is brown adipose tissue or brown fat. This is active fat. It burns energy and is protective to you, and it's really good to have. And it's stored in certain parts of the body. The reason why it's great for energy is because it's full of mitochondria. And if you don't know what mitochondria is, without going into a science lesson, it's the power cells and energy that's stored within each one of your cells. So brown fat is really good. The bad fat is called visceral fat. And if you've got a body scale, we give all of our clients that work with us a body scale. We can measure body fat. And this is the fat that is stored around your organs. And that is the bad fat. Now, something I want to make you aware of, which is important with the fat that you see, your subcutaneous fat. Everyone has a personal subcutaneous fat storage limit. And if you store more fat, you may look bigger, but be metabolically healthy. Now, someone that has a low capacity for storing subcutaneous fat spills into visceral fat a lot sooner. So you can actually look lean and healthy, but be at higher risk than someone that looks fatter, just because they have a lower capacity of storing subcutaneous fat. So visible fat is not the full story. So if someone looks fat, doesn't necessarily mean that they're metabolically unhealthy. This is why within our primal pyramid system, we measure visceral fat, not just body weight and fat percentage. So this is really important. Exact meal timing matters less than a consistent eating window. To keep a consistent eating window, ideally, you've got to start and finish, ideally, with no more than a 60-minute variance. So if you generally eat most days between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., you want to keep that relatively the same. So don't eat any earlier, start eating any earlier than 8 or any later than 10. Don't finish eating any later than 7 or any earlier than 5. It's the eating window that matters. And you need to ideally stop eating within 4 hours before you go to bed, at least 3 hours before you go to bed, so that your body has a chance to digest most of the food so that you can have a restful sleep. And some foods, like the one that you can see on the screen, some foods here are really important to know what you're eating. So all the foods you see here are processed foods. What we really should be eating is whole foods. And this is where the 80-20 rule will come in. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. But whole foods are the foods that we are supposed to eat. And a big point that I want to note here is that I'm not trying to teach you a diet. This isn't the primal pyramid diet. This is how we should eat. We should eat real food. And all successful diets out there, whether it be vegan, carnivore, Atkins, whatever, they agree on two things: that we should prioritize whole foods and protect muscle with adequate protein. So all I'm here to do is to tell you the best time to eat and the best foods to eat. What you do with that and how you manage it is up to you. So remember, no diet beats processed food and low protein. That's a fact. And a saying that I like to say all the time is, if you can't kill it or grow it, spill it or throw it. And if you keep that in mind, you usually won't go wrong. The next thing I want to point out is how you can control your calories. Types of ways that you can control your calories. One is tracking them, which is calorie restriction. The next is time restriction, which is like fasting. And the one after that is dietary restriction, which is removing one food group. That could be carbs, fat, or protein. Now, the reason why most people remove carbs, which is what you'll see on the image, is because it's less essential than fat or protein. With fat, you've got essential fatty acids, which you need. It's essential to life. With fat, essential fatty acids, and protein is essential amino acids. They're things that you need to be able to live. So you really can't survive without certain fats and proteins. So that's why most people, when they do dietary restriction, remove carbohydrates rather than fat or protein. Mix between calorie restriction and dietary restriction, not timing restriction. Because with calorie restriction, one day you could track your calories and make sure you stay at a certain level. Or the other day you might not be able to track your calories. So you just decide, do you know what? I'm going to remove carbs. And that's fine. You can do that on a day-by-day basis, but you can't mix around timing restriction, because timing restriction messes with your eating window. Because if one day you decided to track your calories, but you ate between 9 and 5, and another day you decided to do a timing restriction and only have one meal in the middle of the day, which would mean that, you eat between 12 and 1. That massively shortens your window and it makes it difficult to keep a consistent eating window. So you can mix calorie restriction and dietary restriction, but you can't mix in timing restriction. So you need to decide what one works for you in terms of managing your calories. Next is the Nova scale. And just like business, you might not do this, but I've done this for a very long time, which is I have a 70-20-10 focus in my business. 70% of my time is spent on one type of thing, 20% of my time is spent on another type of thing, and 10% of my time is spent on another thing. And this is the principle that I'm going to apply to this, but there is a bit of flexibility with it. So the Nova scale is a way of measuring processed foods. So I'm going to reveal these to you at the moment. And as you can imagine, group number 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods, like whole foods, fruits, vegetables, meat, eggs, things like that. Then you've got group 2, which is like processed culinary, and we can add these to our foods. So if you add these in, this is considered group 2, and it's minimum and it's processed, but it's not extremely bad to have in small quantities. I mean, olive oil, extra virgin with polyphenols, is actually very, very good for you, but you don't want to have tons and tons of it because it's very high in calories. So you will only have a small amount of it. That doesn't mean that things in group 2 are bad for you. So nuts, I want to point out, is in group 2 because it can easily fall into a higher group depending on how they are processed. They can be in group 1 if it's totally raw, but if it's more difficult to get them like this. Usually there's added salt or something on them that makes them into group 2 or group 3. I mean, some nuts can be in group 4 if there's loads of added stuff in it. But yeah, it's just also given their calorie denseness, so they're very caloric dense. We want to, keep them to a minimum, but again, nuts and seeds can be very good for you. So group 2, there can be some good stuff for you, but they just need to be eaten in smaller amounts. Then you've got processed foods, which is not ultra processed, so they're still not horrible for you. However, Most bread in the supermarket, I want to point out, sits in group 4, but bread made properly, like sourdough, with minimal ingredients, is technically group 3. So just be careful. If you want to eat bread, make sure it's in group 3. And a well-made sourdough, as an example, would be one of these things. And then we've got group 4, which is ultra processed. So this is 70-20-10, and 70% needs to be group 1. 20% needs to be group 2 and 3, and then 10% can be group 4. Now you can mix this up a little bit. So you could do 80-20. So you could have 80% group 1, 10% group 2 and 3, and then 5% or 10% group 4. And again, you can mix these around totally if you want, but the main rules that you've got to work by is that group 1 has to be a minimum of 70% of your diet. And then group 4 is a maximum of 10%. So you can always reduce down group 4 to 5% or even 0 if you wanted to. But looking at this, ask yourself, are there some things you thought that weren't in group 4 or that were in different groups? My ones were definitely protein bars and shakes. I had loads of protein bars and loads of protein shakes. Now, there are some protein bars out there that use natural ingredients, so could fall under group 3. But you need to make sure that you're checking the ingredients. Get into the habit of turning over the packet when you go to a supermarket and check those ingredients. And my rule is if there's something on the back that you don't know what it is and it doesn't sound like a normal ingredient, it is probably ultra processed and you should put it down. So hopefully that gives you an idea and understanding of the Nova scale. And then we'll move on to the actions that you need to do to effectively manage the inventory department or the inventory staff and effectively manage your insulin, which keeps your body fat and your fat at the right level. So just remember, if you can't kill it or grow it, spill it or throw it, and look at the 80-20 rule or the 70-20-10. Remember, you can mix this around a little bit as well. Number 2, do what works for you, but keep the same eating window. If you can, 60 minutes. However, you can allow yourself 90-minute variance. It's important that you keep a consistent window. Timing is everything when it comes to your body. If you want your body to be in rhythm and you want your hormones to be released at the right time and in the right levels, timing is everything. Now, last but not least, the term protein, just so you know, is derived from the Greek word proteus, meaning primary. So it's the primary thing that you should focus on when it comes to your macros. First meal has to be high in protein and focus on getting 1.5 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of ideal body weight. So if you are fatter than you should be, right, and you know you should be a lot thinner, whatever your ideal body weight is, that's how you calculate your protein. Increase protein. So this is an important point. A lot of people may cut their protein, but actually what you need to do is cut other things and increase your protein slightly, not massively, just slightly to what you normally do so that you can maintain your muscle mass when you're on a cut. So just remember that when you're on a cut, increase your protein to help you maintain muscle mass. So what did we learn today? Cortisol equals a performance hormone, not a stress hormone, as long as it's timed correctly. When it's high in the evening, that's when it's stressful. Insulin equals inventory control, so burning versus storing. Visceral fat is dangerous. Subcutaneous fat, the fat that we see, is just storage. It's neutral. It doesn't mean that you're metabolically unhealthy if you're a little bit fatter on the outside than what you'd like to be. And brown fat is protective to you because it's full of mitochondria. Number 4, these are the 3 levers that you have to pull on. So remember, calorie restriction, how much you eat, timing restriction, when you eat, or what you remove, dietary restriction. And then last but not least, remember to eat whole foods, have a consistent window, and stop eating 3 hours before bed. That is what equals stability for your diet. So, a little pop quiz. This is the best way to lock in your learning. So if you've followed along all the way up until now, get your pen out or just do it mentally. But if you fail, that's okay. Getting answers wrong is the way that your brain remembers. So when you fail at stuff, your brain remembers it better and adjusts for next time. It's the same in the gym, it's the same in business, and it's the same with everything that you learn. So next, first question. What should cortisol naturally be at its highest? Or when should cortisol be naturally at its highest? What is insulin's main job? Number 3, which fat, SAT, VAT, or BAT, is most strongly linked to health risk? Number 4, what do all successful diets have in common? Number 5, what matters more for metabolic stability? Perfect food choice or a consistent eating window? So number 1, when should cortisol naturally be at its highest? Answer, in the morning, shortly after waking. Number 2, what's insulin's main job? Answer, to decide whether energy is used or stored. Number 3, which fat, SAT, VAT, or BAT, is most strongly linked to health risk? Answer, VAT, visceral fat or visceral adipose tissue. Number 4, what do all successful diets have in common? Answer, they prioritize whole foods and improve consistency. And going to tag on there, prioritize protein. Number 5, what matters more for metabolic stability? This is sort of multiple choice. 50-50 chance on this one. Perfect food choice or consistent eating window? Yep, you got it. The answer, consistent eating window. So just going to finish off. What was the 1 or 2 things that you will do off the back of today? Write them down. Make sure you remember them and get everything in the right rhythm. So if this episode resonated with you, please feel free to share it with someone who you think this will help. And remember, always, always be young, be happy, be free, people. I'll see you on the next episode.